All right, so here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. My name is Andrew Holmes. This is my father, Tim. He'll introduce himself in a moment, and we want to tell a little bit of our story, just to kind of give you some insight as to what got us here. About 9 months ago, I lost my sister, his daughter, in a car accident, and then 66 days later, we lost my brother in a tragic car accident as well. And in that time, we've experienced all kinds of emotion, all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of feelings, all kinds of ups and downs, and dealt with things that we never thought we would have to deal with. And during that time, we've had a lot of people reach out to us, ask us questions, and we've just come to understand that unless you go through it, it's hard to understand. But there's a lot to grab as you go through this experience, and we hope that, you know, it's kind of been put on us to share our story to potentially help others, and it's a story we're sharing, our healing. So let's just get right into it. Dad, maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Andrew. So my name is Tim Holmes. I'm from St. John, New Brunswick, born and raised Canada. Father of 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. Kiesha would be the oldest girl, 32 years old. Andrew Holmes would be 32 yet, or 31
32.
still?
32.
I'm trying to give you a little bit of credit there. All right, we'll go with 32. And then Kiesha, who's just would be on her way to turn 31 here next month, and TJ Holmes, 25. So as Andrew mentioned, thought it would be great for us to share a story. There's an overwhelming response when we lost Kiesha, the oldest of the 4 children, her daughter, back on May 29th of 2021, and as Andrew mentioned, 66 days later, his brother, our son TJ, was 25, lost his life in both of them are tragic car accidents, 2 different provinces. Our daughter was in Moncton, New Brunswick at the time. In the past 11 years, my wife Julie and I have been living in Alberta with TJ. He passed away in Alberta, and like I say, both were tragic car accidents, and we thought how we're even able today, if you will, to get up and out of bed and to move forward in life. We could share our story, and as Andrew mentioned, a lot of people, unless you have faced stuff like this, really can't relate. And we thought we would try to be that transparency to show people how we've got to where we are today, and what we're still dealing with on a daily basis to move forward in life, and hopefully that we can change at least one person's life through this podcast, if you will, between us. So that's kind of where it started, and then if we want, we can get right, like you say, into it. And if I can dial us back to when I first got the phone call about our daughter, your sister Kiesha, getting in her accidents, and where I was at work, and kind of go through those stages with Kiesha. And then in between Kiesha and TJ passing, we can talk about how that grieving piece was with Kiesha, and then when TJ had his accident, kind of go through that phase, and hopefully give everybody the insight at that point of what we've done, where we were at, how we've supported each other as a family, and kind of go from there. So if you think that's good, then we can get started if you'd like, and I can take us back there.
Let's do it.
So on March 26th at approximately 2:25 p.m., this would have been Mountain Time. I must say, as you can see, we're both sitting in the same room, so we are now sitting in St. John, New Brunswick, so things have definitely changed, even in the physical world here for us, where we've relocated. But at this point in time, May 26th, about 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time, I was sitting in my office in Edmonton, Alberta, and I got a call from my wife, Julie Holmes, saying that Kiesha had been in a car accident, and it doesn't look good, it looks grave. The conversation was very, as you can well imagine, very hard to understand, very bleak. My wife was, if you will, hysterical at the time. I could barely make out who and what she was saying. At first, I wasn't even sure which child she was talking about. But I got enough that there was a grave accident that had taken place, and that was enough for me to be, I'll be right home. She was working from home at the time. I'm sure everybody knows in the world at this point, COVID was definitely strong. So we were, but my work, where I was working at, we were still going into the office. So anyhow, I immediately said I'll be home, hung up the phone, and got home as quick as I could. As I pulled into the yard at our, we had just bought a new home, Edmonton, so we just moved in March. The way the house was set up is that you come into the garage, which was detached from the house, and as you come out of the garage, you would go up to the back deck to get into the back door. So as I come out of the garage, I see the back deck, and my wife Julie was there with the phone to her ear, and I'm running towards the deck, and she doesn't know I'm home yet, I don't believe. And as I'm running up towards the deck, she just collapses on the ground, and the phone went sliding across the deck boards, if you will. And she's very, very, like I say, distraught, crying, obviously. So I'm like, babe, what's wrong? What's going on? I couldn't understand what she was saying. I got her up to be able to sit in the chair, and then I was like, okay, she's on the phone. I got to get the phone. I don't know who she was talking to. See what I can do to help the situation. So I go to grab the phone, and people were still on the phone. And the people that were on the phone was the hospital in Moncton, New Brunswick. We had doctors, and from what I understand, some friends that were in the room at the same time, and we were on speakerphone, or Julie was at the time. So I said, hello, this is Tim Holmes, and who am I speaking with? And so they're like, this is Dr. So-and-so, and we have Kiesha here, your daughter, and we have to get a couple of answers right away. And I'm like, okay, at this point I really truly wasn't sure what was going on. I just knew that she was in an accident. So coming to find out, they'd asked me on that spot if Kiesha would want to have her organs donated, because they didn't have, I don't believe they had found her driver's license and stuff from the accident yet to see if she was a donor. So as parents, we had to give that right over, and at that point I knew things were very serious. So there wasn't time to ask questions. They were like, we need to know right now, time is of the essence because of the situation, and we need to know if she wants her organs donated. We're looking at minutes to hours at this point, is all I could get. So I went into, if you will, solution mode and answer the questions type of thing, so I can move on to figure out what we need to do, where things are at. Julie still was not really coherent. To ask her a whole lot, I was asking her like, babe, do you realize what the doctor's asking? And she just couldn't do any responses at that time. So I went into, like I say, the mode to answer the questions, and said yes, our daughter would want that. She'd want her organs donated, and the situation, like I say, was very grave. They're giving it a couple of hours at best at that point, and that they had to get back to operations or what might need to be operated on. They hadn't done any at that time, but the stabilizer didn't have time to answer really any questions other than when will you be here, and of course I said I'd get on to the next flight as soon as I could. So I hung up the phone from the hospital, now understanding the situation was my daughter was on life support. At any given time between now and a few hours, they told us that things would be grave and she could pass. Didn't look good. So I was able to go to Julie, and we got each other calmed down as best we could to figure out what our next steps were, which obviously was engaging with the family. So everybody was aware, especially in today's age with social media. Things can get out there, and the last thing you want to have is your family members hearing something like this through social media, and then their body going into shock. So we, when my wife and I, Julie, talked, I was kind of the owner of getting everybody from the family up to speed on where we were at, and Julie was getting things ready as we were getting ready to obviously book our flights and whatnot. So at that moment, I ended up calling my mom and dad, informing them, calling yourself, Andrew, informing you, and your sister, Kiesha, who was at the time physically living in Edmonton, to get a hold of her and letting you all know what had transpired. So I guess, before I get to the next phase of us booking our flights and coming to Moncton.
Was TJ home?
TJ at the time was at work.
Right.
So absolutely. I got a hold of TJ as well. Yeah, he was at work at the time when I informed him. And then, I can hand it over to you to kind of speak to of when I called you.
Yeah.
To inform you on how you felt and all that, and then once you're done, and I guess I can go back to the next phase of getting Kiesha.
Yeah, I remember I was at work at the time, and I remember I was staying late that evening because I had a board meeting for Pro Kid that happened like once a month. And usually I would just stay at work and then have the meetings. And I remember the meeting started at 5:30, so I had that half hour between 5 and 5:30 where I just kind of like kicked around the office. No one was there, everyone had left, and I was just kind of having my supper and whatever. And then I sat down. It was like 5 minutes to time to have the meeting, and my phone rang, and it was your name. And when I saw that, I was like, it's kind of weird. Like, why? Like, usually Dad wouldn't call me during the day. Like, at either he would try me at lunch if he was going to try me during the day, or he would try me after work, or on the weekend because of the time difference to talk to the kids. So instantly I was like, okay, something's going on. And I pick up the phone, and you had shared that there was an accident, and you were right to the point of the fact you're like, there's an accident. I don't know the details. It's your sister in Moncton. I'll let you know more. I'll let you know when we know more. And there was you could tell you were kind of in like the okay, let's get people up to date mode, and then I'll deal with the next thing. You were so like, okay, I'm just gonna do this. This is the only thing I can do right now. I'm just gonna update people. Like it wasn't about sharing emotion at that time. It wasn't about any of those things. It was just, I need to do what needs to be done, which is update people. And so we had that conversation. And it was very quick. I didn't want to keep you. I got what I needed. You didn't know much. So I said, okay, I'm gonna let him go. And instantly in my mind, I'm like, it's just so quick. Like, I don't, actually, it could mean anything. I mean, I know you said car accident, but it could mean just a ding. Was she with the kids? Is she gonna lose her life? I have no idea. And like that range of what ifs is huge, and it's terrifying. So I immediately went to my boardroom, which is like directly behind my chair. I turned around my chair, went to the boardroom, and I started praying. And I prayed for God to just protect us and protect Kiesha and to be with us. And I was just bawling because again, just terrified of the thought. Because at that point in my life, I hadn't really, like, I'd lost like Julie's parents, but my grandparents, biological grandparents, had all been alive. My great grandfather passed when I was younger, so no one really like that was in my immediate family had I lost. So mourning was a whole new thing, or like a potential grief situation was all new to me. So I'm like, oh geez, here we go. I don't know what's gonna happen. So then I didn't go to my pro kids meeting. I let them know there's a situation I need to deal with. I called Caitlin, and I let her know, and my wife is Caitlin, and I think my mom had the kids, or she was going with the kids, or something like that. I came home, picked up Caitlin, and went to Nan and Gramps. My grandparents live not too far from my house, which is really great in a time like this. Went there, hung out with Nan and Grant for a bit. We just discussed the possibilities, and yeah, we were just there. And then there was a point where you thought we lost her, and you called us because we were waiting for a phone call for just the next. So it was best for us all to be in the same room. So you had actually called us and shared that we had lost her. So of course we all we were upset, and as you can imagine, and dealt with that. And my kid showed up with my mom to my grandparents' place, and we shared it with my daughter, who's 6. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we shared it with her because she was wondering why mommy, like, everyone was crying. So she shared it, and she has a bit of an understanding of heaven anyway. So we said, this is what's happening. And anyway, yeah. So then the next day I woke up to text saying that she was actually still alive, because some people were sharing, fight Kiesha and this, because I went to bed, geez, I just lost my sister, now I gotta start this grieving process. And then turns out that she actually hadn't passed, she was holding on. So we made our way from St. John to Moncton, which is like an hour drive, and we did stay there for a few days. And this is kind of the point where we were trying to now work with you guys to get you guys to Moncton as fast as possible. And this is like the middle of COVID too, so we're trying to figure out how do we get someone into New Brunswick, get their proper testing, get into a hospital. Like, the amount of tape that we had to cross just for that alone is probably an hour podcast itself. But yeah, basically we waited, you guys showed up, and kind of went from there.
Yeah, exactly. That was an interesting time for sure. So to pick back up where we were at. So after, like, say, making the contact with everybody with what I knew, which was very minimal at the time, because that was the initial call. The doctor couldn't give me much of information. But like I say, they did call back, and I'll just kind of do the best I can over the next 24 hours, because there was a lot of calls between us and the hospital, as well as a lot of, I won't say rumors, but maybe misconceptions, words that were flying around. But anyway, I'll kind of snap the best I can here. So I did, shortly after I contacted everybody initially, because like I said, we didn't have much information other than, our organs being donated was the question. So anyway, after contacting everybody shortly after that, now I'm looking for flights, obviously, to get us home the next flight. And we got another call back from the hospital, and a little bit more detail was shared. At that point, they were like, she has 0 to 10% of her brain capacity functioning, truly on life support, and it was decreasing as we speak. And the doctor said that's where he felt, when we first initially talked, that it probably minutes to hours, because he doesn't see that reversing. So it's a matter of time, and all intents and purposes, like I say, we were pretty much, we've lost her. He said it was decreasing rapidly, in hopes that maybe we can make it there before she did pass, but if not, just to prepare us for the reality of what was taking place up until that moment. So at that time, I had to make my calls back around, like say, limit the amount of calls I had to make, which was kind of the thing, was you guys being with mom and dad was great, because it was one call, I could hit everybody here with the update, which I did, and it was tough, but obviously it was something that needed to be done, to make sure everybody back here was aware that we looked like we were going to lose Kiesha at that moment, and then of course getting a hold of, like, say, your brother TJ and Kiesha in Edmonton, and TJ was on his way home at this point from work. He was distraught like everybody else, and had he went to go visit a friend of his that had lost a brother not too long ago, so to kind of get some direction and consoling and that type of thing, and just informed that we would be leaving for the airport within the next 12 hours. Right now, looking at the flight would be the next morning, if you will, early morning flight. So come home and we'll get everything ready and get everybody prepared and all that good stuff. And at the time, TJ was living with us with his girlfriend Shelby at the time, and his son Braxton, who quite wasn't a year old yet. But now we're, like, say, looking at all that was who's coming, who's not, with us to come back, who can, who can't, type of thing. There was 2 of her grandchildren that were living with us at the time, and there was like, well, what about the children? How are we going to do all this? So which was great of Shelby. Shelby raised her hand, and she's like, look, you guys go, I'll watch all the children, make sure they get to school and back. TJ was up, to come along as well with us. Kiesha, for other reasons, she was in situations where she just couldn't make it at the time, going through some things with the clinics and stuff like that out in Alberta. So we got everything booked up, informing everybody that we're coming back here as soon as possible. Then the phone rings again from the hospital and saying, hey, we're seeing some improvement. And she's actually, it's starting to reverse for some reason. They said what can happen is after these traumas with the head, the swelling plays a big part of it. And it's hard to, really determine what the state until they start to get the swelling to come down and can really see where the majority of the damage is and what they can be done and that type of thing. But she was currently on life support, and at that time, her boyfriend at the time and close friends were there, which we're very grateful for, that they were there to be by our side during this time where we weren't. But we were getting some good updates from them, and there seemed to be some movement, even possibly finger movement, that type of thing. Not to go down too far there, but sometimes, as you know, when trauma happens, there's nerves, and sometimes things are moving because of the nerve damage and stuff like that. Not necessarily because they're being controlled by the person, but you're hoping for everything positive that you can in those stages, as you can well imagine. So we're kind of going from shock to reality very quickly. I would say up until now was very, very much in shock. Now we're getting some reality of what was really going on, and anyhow, as they explained to us that the swelling was kind of going down, it looked like they were getting some improvements up to around the 10% or so above of brain functionality, and they said it's a good sign. They knew that we were coming, that we were finding out the next day and everything. So they said it's not over yet. She's fighting. Her heartbeat was very strong, so the heart was good, but there was obviously quite a bit of trauma to the body. So anyhow, long story short, like you mentioned, we had everything coordinated to come into Moncton, flying the next night. I think we were due to get in around midnight the next night. With the help of yourself and Caitlin, like I said, there's so much going on with this COVID to get us, from one province to the other, just in Canada. You guys were taking care of everything behind the scenes here for us while we were in the air. Myself, Julie, and TJ. Flying into Montreal was our, if you will, our layover coming into Moncton. And I remember being in the air coming into Moncton. There's basically, a lot of things you're thinking of for that 4.5 hour flight. And it was so rapidly changing. We didn't know what we were going to land and come into, because at that point when we left Edmonton, there was a hope. There really was, that the doctors and the hospitals gave us. So, and at that point we still didn't know how we were getting into Moncton and what we would do once you got in there because of COVID. So once we landed in Montreal, I remember connecting with yourself and Caitlin, and you guys said, by the Red Cross we have to do this and this. And God love you, the guys had already had all that stuff processed, because when we landed in Moncton, there was actually the border services, I believe it was, they're called anyway. As soon as you got the flight, you had to have all your paperwork while you were coming into New Brunswick. And if you didn't have it, you weren't going anywhere. So you guys, basically, it was a process of updating everything, all of our information with the Red Cross Society, and the doctor actually had to sign a note about the urgency of why we needed to be there. And they had to have all this information in front of them when we arrived. So anyway, when we landed in Montreal, remember all that conversation was happening, things were moving good. And then we got an update basically from the hospital that things were going, it's kind of like, how far away are you? We're in Montreal, we'll be there, obviously the next flight, we got about an hour layover. And they're like, okay, well, she is starting to turn the opposite way, unfortunately. And but we're doing the best we can. We got her stabilized right now. So we landed in Moncton airport, and we had no idea if we were going to get accepted at this point. We didn't know. We knew that time was of the essence, because obviously Red Cross and these places were only open business hours. We were flying in at midnight, and come to find out that it's like, okay, they hadn't received the doctor's note and whatnot. The doctor, so we called the hospital. The doctor was now gone for the day, but he did write the note. And the new nurse was like, that was there when the doctor signed the note. And she said, usually when she passes that stuff on, and obviously she disposes of it, but ironically this one time, for whatever reason, she said, I kept it. So she still had a copy, and she was able to get it scanned over immediately to the border services so they could have it. Meanwhile, we're standing in front of them waiting for them to receive it. And they received it, the note saying, we could enter, and our daughter situation. So they allowed us to pass through. And I remember getting our bags and standing outside waiting for a cab, and I called everybody, let them know that we were here. I remember talking to my mom and dad and informing them that we had arrived and we're heading right straight to the hospital. We'll update them as soon as we get there. We had no idea what we were going to be coming into at the hospital. But at the same moment, as soon as I was talking to my mom about the situation, I did have a sense of, I believe they were doing the best they could to keep Kiesha alive for us to arrive. We didn't know the full state of anything. It was more or less them basically going, we'll see when you get here, and we'll be able to better update you. But it wasn't, at that moment the feeling was very helpless. A lot of emotions. We're running on basically no food at this point because of what has happened over the past 24 hours. But knowing you got to support everybody, and everybody's got to support themselves and all of us. So we hadn't seen you guys in quite a few years due to COVID. So we get in the cab, get to the hospital, and you and Caitlin were there waiting for us, which was great. And I remember it was such a surreal moment, because you want to celebrate because you haven't seen each other for a long time. but it wasn't a moment to celebrate. Everybody's going through a very hard situation that none of us have ever been exposed to before. Anyway, it was a lot of tears. They were mixed, they were mixed with excitement of seeing your family, but of sadness as well because of the poorness of just pouring those emotions all into the same, if you will, physical body, and trying to separate them all was basically just not like, if you couldn't feel good at the moment because it was almost like a guilty feeling to go, my daughter's up there, I can't feel good about seeing my son and his wife right yet, but I miss them, so I'm thankful they're here. Then the other flip side is like, I got to get upstairs. I haven't seen my son and my daughter-in-law. Is it fair for me to go, sorry guys, but I got to go see your sister?
Well, the add-on to that too is like they were saying, when these three people land from Edmonton here, they're going into isolation. They're going to do this, and they're going up. But it's going to be like they're not even in. So we're like, so you're telling me my dad, my stepmom, my brother are going to come to this province? I haven't seen them in years, and I'm not going to be able to see them. Like we caught you when the cab came out, and we went and seen you. But otherwise, the government, like the plan was, no, these guys are just like sneaking underground. Like you're not even going to be able to associate with them. And I'm like that's another added pressure of like, I wanted to see my family.
Yeah, you nailed it, and that was what we were told too. Is we had to get in the cab that was disinfected, if you will. So it was disinfected to come and pick us up. We get in the cab, like saying, and they told us we had to go straight into the hospital, and they'll be waiting for us. But like you say, you guys, ironically, were right there for us, and we're going to take that moment. I don't care.
Yeah, that's right.
It didn't really matter who was going to try to tell me something different. So we took that moment, and then once we walked into the hospital, they were waiting for us, and it was, overall was a great. They did a great job. Don't get me wrong, but when we first went in, absolutely, it was like, what is going on? Like everybody was that was in the hospital, even like waiting, like patients sitting in the patient room. Everybody was looking at us like we were coming from alien.
Oh yeah, man!
And they came in, and anyway, they approached us and said, "You're the folks from Alberta. I need you to put these, the suits on, the PPE and all that, and you got to go to this isolated room where nobody else is at."
Yeah.
So first it was a room off of the waiting room, which was glass, whatever, where you could see the people. So we're sitting in there, and the next thing you know, they said, "Yeah, you got to do your COVID swab," which we hadn't done before. Anyway, so you got to come to this other room. So now we go to this other room, which was, I don't know what it was used for before, but there was no windows, there was nothing. And it looked like a, shower towel floor. And anyway, there was a back door that I guess whoever might have got freaked out before, they could run out the back door. But anyway, but it was locked. So anyway, we're sitting there and we're waiting for them to come in. It was, a good, say, half hour. They came in with the swabs, and they swabbed us. It was the initial swabs, which, kind of drive it up to your brain there to make sure everything's okay. So that was an experience to behold. And then they told us we had to wait outside in our vehicle for, I think it was anywhere from an hour to 2 hours for the results to come back. And we had to be escorted out around everybody a certain way anyway to get out and get to our car. And wait for that hour and a half before they could allow us up. So obviously the emotions again were running high. We're now there.
Yeah.
Our daughter is literally, 4 or 5 floors up.
Yeah.
And we couldn't see her. We can't move. We can't do anything other but sit in the vehicle, wait for the test results to come back. So we do that. We obviously talk with you folks, wait for our time, and then we are told we can now go in. But here's the stipulation was, anybody that was from New Brunswick, they're able to go in together anytime. As soon as we go in, nobody from New Brunswick can come in. We can stay in there, and I believe it was up to 24 hours, but nobody could come in with us. And then when we leave, we leave, they disinfect the room, and then people from New Brunswick could go in, but we can't go in. And I think it was, I can't remember, I think Julie probably remembers the time, but I think it was a minimum of 12 hours we'd have to wait before we go back in again. So we had to let everybody know that. So people obviously, like I'm sure yourselves, going like, okay, we'll all go in. Let's go. Let's do it together. Be supportive from one another because we didn't know what we were walking into, obviously physically. However, that wasn't the case. It was you guys, as being myself, my wife Julie, and our son TJ were the only ones that could go in. when we walked in this room, and we couldn't leave. We couldn't leave to use the washroom, get coffee. Once we walked in that room, that was our bubble for the next 24 hours. So we did, and as you can well imagine, anybody that has been around sickness and possibly, loss of life, family member, when you walk in, the shock is unbelievable. Yeah. And sometimes you do need to maybe step out to have a breath, or go grab a coffee, go for a walk. I'm a big walker. I like to, when I'm under stress or those type of things, I need to walk. This wasn't an option. Once I walked through that door, no matter what I saw, we had to stay there. And if I walked out, I couldn't go back in. So no matter what, I had to prepare myself, because last time I saw my daughter she was living and she was healthy and vibrant. And now to know that no matter what I see, no matter how my body reacts, how my wife's body reacts, how my son's body reacts, we have to stay there, and I have to be ready to support them, because I don't know how they're going to react, because they don't know either. So anyway, long story short, we made our way up, and we opened that door. And I guess before I go to the next phase, I can hand it over to you and let you explain what you felt when we arrived, and how that was hard. Maybe when we had to look at you guys and go, yeah, you can't come with us. Like, we got to go alone.
Yeah. It was so tough, like, because at that point we had been there. We've been amongst in just kind of the parking lot for a long time, and chatting with Red Cross and the government and the hospital. Those are kind of the three parties, and they're not really all in line with everything. So that's what, God love Caitlin. I wouldn't have been able to do it myself. I don't have the mind for that kind of thing, but she does, and she was able to help organize all that, and so that's added pressure or added stress. But I'm just waiting for you guys to come, and also wondering what's going to happen with Kiesha, and also wondering, when you get here, am I going to be able to see you, and what that's going to be like, and how many of these rules am I willing to follow, and just question marks. In every half hour, something's changing, or there's a new feeling, and it was so much. And people are messaging you and asking you questions and offering support, and people are calling to pray with you, and there's just so much. And I remember going up to see her. We got there that day, and we had to wait quite a few hours to get up there, between visiting hours and who was up there last, and cleaning schedule and all of that. And I believe I had to go in by myself the first time. I can't remember if Caitlin was in with me, or maybe she was. I can't remember. But I remember walking in the room. It was a regular hospital room, and I remember I walked in, and I couldn't, my peripheral was, she was there, but I couldn't look. I just wasn't looking at her right away. I was kind of looking around the room, and because I knew that she wasn't coherent, she wasn't able to speak to me, and I knew that when I looked at her, that was going to be like, that's an image. Like, this is reality. I'm kind of crossing that threshold. And then I finally looked at her, and there she was. She had the neck brace on, and the hands bandaged up, and there's tubes, and she's just laying there, and the monitors are going do 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 do, so she's alive, and I'm just kind of sat. Like, I stood there with her and held her hand, and kind of took it in, the reality of it. I'm sure I cried. It probably took me a minute too, and then I just talked to her, and I'm sure I prayed a little bit. It's kind of, I don't have a vivid memory of this at all, but that's the most I remember, is just coming in, taking a minute, being with her, and that type of thing. So then I left. I remember leaving that room. I don't know how long I was in there. It might have been 15 minutes. It might have been 45 minutes. I honestly can't remember. But then the next little task was like getting you guys there, and I was looking forward to that. And I remember I kept calling up to the room. I was like, my parents are coming. I need to get in the room with them. What's the situation? Like, how are we making this happen? And I just kept like, I'm trying to figure out a friggin', give me a little of a hole, give me something. I'll wear anything. Like, what do we have to do for that? And it wasn't happening. They weren't. And like, and at that time, we're thinking again, I don't know if I'm going to see them. I don't know. Like, I was like, is this a real possibility that they're going to be in the same province as me? And my sister's dying upstairs, and I'm not going to be able to like embrace them and go through this with them, because you want to be with as many people going through the same experience as possible, and that was all I wanted, was to be with them. And then you're right, when you guys showed up, it was great, but I'm still not sure what's going to happen. You're here, still not sure what's going to happen. But then there was just, I remember your cab pulling up, and I'm like, why? I'm not figuring this out anymore. I know the right thing to do is to see, we're gonna see each other. So I just came up and embraced you guys, and I remember hugging all of you, and it was the first, like, it was a real, like, we all kind of like had a collective, like, together. Like, we all kind of, the five of us were there, Caitlin, myself, you, Julie, TJ, we were all just like in the mixed, like the tears. There was the majority of the tears were from the fact that we're losing Kiesha. Then there's tears that we're together, and there's tears that it's under weird circumstances, and there's tears of I miss you, and there's tears of where's the kids? Like, they should be here too, and like we should all be together. It's just so much, man. It was so much. And yeah, then you went in the hospital. You went through what you just said, and then it's really interesting too. And I'm gonna like self-incriminate here, and I don't care, and I'm sure no one's gonna judge me about it. But like, it's like I understand the reasoning and the protocols and what they were going through, given the fact like COVID was happening, and this is what they had to do. But when we went back to the hotel, I couldn't not be in the same hotel as you and not see you. So we came down and we saw you, and that was great. And we had that time together, which I would take that risk over and over and over and over again, because I hadn't seen you guys and what we're going through. And now thinking back, this hindsight that I've got, that was precious time with my brother that I needed to get and needed to have. And I have memories of him from that hotel stay that I'm cherishing, and I wouldn't do that any different way. But yeah, so that was the first night when you guys got there. My God, there's just the emotion. But the greatest thing was that we were able to be together. And then the next, so that would have been May 28th. So then going into May 29th is right.
Yeah. There's quite a bit for sure that hit on there, Andrew. That's great, because the COVID definitely played a big part of this. But yeah, like to kind of go back for myself to, we're now at the door. There would have been Kiesha, obviously Kiesha's there, and there's myself and wife Julie and TJ. And as we enter the door, and see Kiesha, like you say, she's on the machines, and we're approaching the bed, and seeing somebody that was so full of life, like, helplessly like that, and knowing that I am, obviously I haven't seen her for, it would have been 4 years, I think, last time I physically was able to touch her, hold her, feel her, and we talked quite a bit, that over the years, to obviously FaceTime and stuff like a lot of family members did with COVID. But anyway, in the field, my wife's pain, of watching some, a human being that she gave birth to, lay there, helpless, and definitely again grateful and thankful for all the people, friends and family that were in New Brunswick at the time of this, that were able to be beside Kiesha's side while we were in in transit. We are very grateful and love you all for that. So we were in the room, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning by the time we get in there, 2:30, and knowing that we can't leave the room, so that's fine. We're going to be there for the evening, and we take our turns and hugging Kiesha and talking to her. And at this time, she was life support, but we were getting some updates, but I won't go through each one of those. Basically get to the last piece, which was basically there's a decision to be made. She now was making, she was regressing, she was losing, the swelling was down, they had things under control. However, there was 100 plus bones that were broken in her body, and some of them were obviously major bones, and they had us begin to do an operation right away if we choose to leave her on life support. We were back down to less than 10% of brain functionality, and the specialist told us that if we choose to allow her to go off life support, there's a chance, yes, she may make it, but there's a good chance she won't. If she stays on life support, she won't probably get any better for the rest of her life. Miracles happen every day, absolutely, but they're miracles for a reason, and they're very slim to none when they do happen. There's a better probability that if she were to stay on life support, that's the way she would be for the rest of her life. And what do we do? She said, her body will begin to fight because her heart is good, the best that it can, but he doesn't seem to see where that brain functionality will ever come back to being in, so she wouldn't be able to raise her. She has 3 children, at this time, 11, 8, and a little over a year-old child. And we were stuck with the decision that had to be made within the next 24 hours. So we spend the night, if you will, that night. The next day, like you say, we had a hotel that was close by, and that was the stipulation was that we were to remain in that hotel room during our duration. At that time, I think we had a 2-week booking. Weren't sure how long we'd be there. We didn't know what we were walking into, obviously. But to your point, it was all about making sure that we were truly isolated, no matter where we went. We were called every day, at least once a day, to confirm where we were at and to validate that we were still, in New Brunswick, in the same room, in the same hotel, and that we weren't around anybody. And by the way, obviously, so far we've tested negative, for COVID, because they allowed us to go into the rooms and stuff. But to your point as well, like the incarceration speech here is with one of my close family members being my daughter, looking in a grave situation. They didn't take me then, they can come take me now. Whoever's listening wants you, but there was no way that people were going to keep me from my family at this stage. We needed them as much as they needed us through this, so absolutely people of our family, close family, obviously stayed in the same hotel like yourselves. And for most the children, we hadn't seen our grandchildren in years in New Brunswick. We needed to see them. That was important to my soul. That was important to my heart to help me get through and be strong for myself, and so I can be there for the rest of everybody else, especially my wife Julie, to get through this. And I needed that love that only a child can deliver at that moment in time. So it was great that you folks were able to stay, and the kids came up, and then we were able to see Kiesha's kids and whatnot. It was really, really good. It was really good for the soul. During that time now, moving forward with the decision that needed to be made, we move in basically May 29th, which is my birthday, and if you will, we had a certain time frame that we had to inform them if we're going to take her off life support or not. Anyway, long story short, there's probably a lot of, well, this or that, but knowing our daughter and knowing the best what she would want, and knowing that she needs to be a mother, she needs to be able to mother, that her being in a vegetative state isn't something that she would want, and for herself or anybody else around her to have to take care of her in that way, she really truly wouldn't be living life. So we get some advice from some of the specialists, the doctor themselves, on what they what their advice was, as well as some of the lead nurses at the time and whatnot. and we try to make the best decision we could, and hoping that maybe her body will, if it naturally rebounds and it's meant to be, and she's going to be a miracle. So the decision was to take her off life support, and at that time we were able to have the okay, like to have yourself to come up and whatnot to do a prayer should things go not the way that we wanted it to go, and as we know, it didn't. It was shortly thereafter, and it was about, I don't know, between 6 and 7 at night on May 29th that she was pronounced deceased, and like I say, it was definitely tough to watch and be part of, but I wouldn't want it any other way if it's for my obviously for my child to be in a presence in that situation where we could say goodbye and say our true goodbyes, and when that she heard us, I know she heard us, and to give that closure. So we May 29th she passes. And now, like you say, there was a lot of emotions, a lot of what next steps we had to take on and do, in support of family supporting us, friends of Kiesha's. Like we had a lot of support to help us get through the next couple of weeks, which included funeral, obviously, arranging those situations, just everything. So the next 2 weeks was a lot. There was a lot of people that wanted to see us. We hadn't seen them in years, just to see us. But Nellie really had a reason to want to see us, to give us a hug, and we wanted to give them a hug, because as much as we were in pain, we knew all the support that was coming through to us. These people were also feeling a lot of pain, and we wanted to, in my mind, in my soul, ease their pain, but let them know that we were okay. But quite honestly, like I say, we couldn't get to everybody, and hence why we're kind of doing this podcast, because we felt it was the best way to reach out to folks to get them up to speed. But anyway, we couldn't do it any sooner. It wasn't one of those things that was even in our minds at that point. It was just, let's get through the moments and support everybody. So at this point in time, like I said, we had about 2 weeks. We're getting ready for Kiesha's funeral, supporting everybody, trying to, that most importantly, be around our closest family, which yourselves and my mom and dad had been, which was awful to see, my parents have to, bury a grandchild, but they were fortunate to be around us, and we were fortunate to be around them for this and give us a lot of support. So yeah, over the next 2 weeks, we had the funeral, and it was a great turnout to pay respects for Kiesha, and seen a lot of great faces, a lot of great people. Meanwhile, we had to obviously prepare to go back to Alberta. We know we had to leave eventually, but we did stay a little bit longer after the funeral. TJ did have to get back for work, so he kind of went back immediately and went back to work while we stayed. I think it was an extra week. So give it, going into, I guess, towards the end of June, mid to end June, we flew back to Alberta, and try to say, okay, we got to have some normalcy in our life, and trying to, get counseling set up, things of that nature, building that. We got to move on with life in the good name of Kiesha and do the best we can. There was just a lot of unknowns of what your body's ready to experience. You don't know how it's going to react to getting up in the morning anymore. You don't know how it's going to react going to work. But you got to look for your tools in your tool bag, as I call it. And there's a lot of tools just never happened before. So I had to learn new tools, and I was traveling at the time to Calgary from Edmonton. So back and forth quite a bit, and I was driving, and I purposely would take the back roads to Calgary just so I could kind of, have my moments. And this Kiesha was a big music person, same as myself, listened to a lot of similar music, and so I could just play music and drive. And I can tell you, one of the grieving things that was good for me was doing that, listening to the music that reminded me of her. And as much as at first a song would come on, and what came to me was I was driving home from work one day, and I was listening just to the radio, and the song came on that reminded me of her, and I basically had to pull over because it touched me so, and I was really crying, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, does this mean I cannot listen to music? I can't, what does this mean? But I'm like, no, like, at the end of it, and I went through my emotions, I felt by the end of the song it actually helped me connect a little bit more with her. And so on my ways to Calgary, I'd start to play the songs on purpose, and at first,
Come on, that's good.
yeah, I would cry, and then as I played more songs, then it started to get better. Or the next, after I did my work in Calgary, and I'd come home on Friday, I'd do it all over again. But now instead of crying, I was starting to connect. I was starting to feel she's with me, and I'd have positive moments, and I feel like, yes, babe, you're here, and then maybe have a little conversation with her, and we laugh or giggle or whatever. So that part was really good for my healing. Was connecting with Kiesha through music.
Yeah.
And my sanctuary was my garage where I could go in and just have some moments between her and I. Meanwhile, like I say, really being supportive of the family. So that's kind of where we're at. So this would bring us probably, we're talking 1st of July. Is where I can stop there because I get into the next phases of what went on in our life after that.
Yeah, I have something that I want to share us on that as we kind of wrap up. I know we want to keep it around an hour, and I think we're getting into like some additional stuff. But you made some super interesting points there. So like you at the end, when you were talking about when we left Moncton and came back to St. John, and how you were looking forward to coming back and connecting with family, and you wanted to make sure that they knew that we were okay, which also led us to this podcast so we could get it out and say, okay, we're doing okay. That to me is so interesting. How? Because I think people are so confused. How can you be okay? What does that even mean? What does okay mean during this time? And now we fast forward 9 months and we're here and we've been okay and we've been able to laugh again. We were laughing during that time. I think we were laughing in the room. We were ordering like life. It didn't suck us to a corner of a house and we're just like holding our knee like we weren't in that state. But how can we be okay? And then you mentioned it again where you said, or I think the answer to that is in what you experienced when you were driving to Calgary in the back roads, listening to her music. I think the initial reaction when you do that is, or when you experiencing something that has to do with her or someone that passes, is like, no, it's too painful. I don't want to go there. I do not want to go there. I don't want to remember. You don't want to remember what those last moments were like. You don't want to like go into that. Well, I think what happened was when we were leaving the hospital and coming back to St. John, and the desire to be around people and tell them we're okay because we were with each other.
Right.
We're okay because we knew there would be moments like you had where we'd be able to connect with her again. We knew there was a memory of her. We knew that, she's in a better place. Like all these things, right? Like we knew we were going to be okay, or that we were okay because we were together, loving each other, all that good stuff. And that's what's kind of propelled us over these last 9 months, is just like this desire to connect with one another more, and this desire to not let their passings just suck the life out of us. It's more of a desire for their passings to give our lives meaning, and to remember that there were 32 years with Kiesha and 25 with TJ of great life that we had with them, and that's what's kept us going, and that's what's and not to say that there aren't times where I've been driving just like you and it's like, holy God, is this my life?
Yeah.
And it hurts, and then sometimes you feel guilty, like laughing or enjoying yourself, and you're like, oh, they should be here, but like, we've come to a point as a family to say, no, we deserve to still have life. We deserve to still laugh, because laughter is one of the best pieces of life. We deserve to still be around each other. So I just thought might be a good way to, I think you've started a good way to end kind of this first chat, is just saying like, we are okay. We do have each other. We miss them dearly. Like, holy gosh, it hurts a lot, but it doesn't take away from the life that we still have, the life that we had with them. So I don't know, man. I think this has been an early good start, and I hope people get something out of this. And if nothing else, I'm learning stuff from this experience, because I never had time to process or understand what you went through that first day. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to getting to continuing this conversation and hearing more too.
Yeah, me too. And like I said, hopefully, everybody tunes in is enjoying it, and in the next phase, obviously, we'll get into TJ's passing and really then into what brings us to today, if you will, and how we it. Probably get in a little bit more from my perspective of the emotional side and the journey and some of the tools that I've used to get up every day, quite honestly, with purpose. And like what you mentioned is 32 and 25 years of being able to know these people, great people. We were fortunate. Some people don't with their children, unfortunately. Yeah. And so, and I believe they needed to be in a better place, a bigger place where they could spread their wings and touch much more people's lives in the spiritual world, if you will, through the eyes of God, if you will, or versus on the physical world where they can only touch, say, single-handedly. Yeah. So they had a bigger purpose that we couldn't deliver here physically in this world for them, because both of them had those big hearts. So that helps get me through it. But yeah, like I said, I'm looking forward to the next podcast where we can get a little bit more. Like I say, we'll talk about TJ, his passing. I was physically there at the car accident, so please tune in. I'll walk us through exactly those visions of what I recall, and the emotions, and then how putting it all together, if you will, how we are here today, like you say, with losing 2 children, you losing a brother and a sister. So anybody that's tuned in, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you found this inspiring, and at least, like you say, you got an understanding of now how Andrew, I, and the rest of our family, that we're here to be able to speak to you today. And we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to move forward. So thanks again. I'll stop there.
All right, sounds good.
And so, how's my boy doing?